The alarm screamed through the bridge of the Velnari trading vessel, Prophet's Edge, as Zekthar watched 3 pirate ships closing in on a small human cargo hauler. His forearms moved across the control panels with practiced efficiency, his blue-scaled face reflecting the red warning lights that bathed the cramped command center. "Sir, we should jump to hyperspace immediately," chittered his navigation officer Vexneal, her antennae twitching nervously. "Those are Korgan raiders. They'll strip that human ship clean and space the crew." Zekthar's compound eyes focused on the tactical display. The human vessel was tiny compared to his own ship, barely larger than a shuttle. Its hull was patched and weathered, clearly an old cargo runner held together by hope and desperation. The pirates were flying sleek interceptors, their weapons already charging for the kill. "Standard protocol is to avoid engagement," Zekthar muttered, his webbed fingers hovering over the hyperspace controls. The Velnari Consortium had strict rules about unauthorized military action. Getting involved in human affairs would mean paperwork, investigations, and likely a demotion. But something made him pause. The human ship wasn't running. Instead, it was broadcasting on emergency frequencies, its captain's voice crackling through the void with determination that surprised him. "This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the cargo vessel Nightingale. We're carrying critical medical supplies to Haven Colony. If anyone can hear this, these people are dying. We can't let this cargo fall into pirate hands." Zekthar's translator picked up the desperation in her voice, but also something else: resolve. This human was willing to die rather than abandon her mission. He'd dealt with humans before, mostly in trade negotiations where they seemed weak and overly emotional. But this was different. The pirate ships opened fire, their plasma cannons lighting up space with deadly green streaks. The Nightingale's shields flared and buckled under the assault. One more hit like that would breach the hull. "Sir, we need to leave now," Vexneal urged, her claws clicking against her console. "The consortium will—" "Load the heavy torpedoes," Zekthar interrupted, his decision made. "Target the lead pirate vessel." The bridge fell silent except for the hum of weapon systems coming online. Zekthar's crew stared at him in disbelief. The Prophet's Edge was a trader, not a warship, but it carried defensive weapons that could punch well above its weight class. "But sir, the regulations are about to become very expensive," Zekthar finished grimly. He opened a channel to the pirates. "Korgan vessels, this is the Velnari ship, Prophet's Edge. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." The response came as a burst of plasma fire directed at his ship. Zekthar's shields absorbed the impact, but barely. These pirates weren't backing down. "Fire all weapons," he commanded. The Prophet's Edge unleashed its full arsenal. Heavy torpedoes streaked through space, followed by bursts from the ship's twin particle cannons. The lead pirate vessel exploded in a brilliant flash, its debris spinning away into the void. The other 2 raiders, caught off guard by the sudden intervention, broke formation and fled into hyperspace. The human cargo ship was badly damaged but intact. Zekthar opened a communication channel, and Captain Vasquez's face appeared on his screen. She was younger than he'd expected, with dark hair pulled back and eyes that held both exhaustion and fierce determination. "Thank you," she said simply. "You saved more lives than you know." Zekthar studied her for a moment. Humans were so different from his own species, smaller, softer, with their single pair of arms and strange emotional expressions. Yet this one had been willing to face death. "For strangers on a distant world, what cargo are you carrying that's worth dying for?" he asked. "Antiviral compounds and medical equipment," Elena replied. "Haven Colony is facing a plague outbreak. Without these supplies, thousands will die. We're the only ship that could make the run through pirate territory." Zekthar's mind raced. He'd just engaged in unauthorized combat, destroyed a pirate vessel, and would face serious consequences when he returned to Velnari space. His cargo hold was full of rare minerals worth a fortune, but his actions here would likely cost him his trading license. "I cannot escort you further," he said. "My actions here will already cause significant problems with my superiors." Elena nodded, understanding in her eyes. "We can't pay you for what you've done. Our colony is poor, and all our resources are going to fight this plague. But I want you to know, humanity remembers its debts. Someday, somehow, we'll find a way to repay you." Zekthar almost laughed. Humans were barely a spacefaring species, confined to a few dozen systems at the edge of civilized space. What could they possibly offer him? "Your gratitude is payment enough," he said diplomatically, though privately he doubted they'd even remember his name in a year. As the Nightingale limped away toward its destination, Zekthar began composing his report. He'd saved a human ship and its precious cargo, but at what cost to himself? The Velnari Consortium would not be pleased. The summons came at dawn, delivered by a chrome-plated enforcement drone that hovered outside Zekthar's luxury apartment on Velnari Prime. Its mechanical voice cut through the morning silence like a blade. "Traitor Zekthar of the Velnari Consortium, you are commanded to appear before the corporate tribunal immediately. Failure to comply will result in forcible extraction." Zekthar's stomach dropped as he read the formal charges scrolling across the drone's display screen. Unauthorized military engagement, destruction of non-hostile vessels, misuse of corporate resources. Each line felt like a death sentence to his career. The tribunal chamber was a massive hall carved from black stone, its walls covered with the golden seals of the consortium's founding families. 12 judges sat behind a curved bench, their scaled faces expressionless as they reviewed the evidence against him. At the center sat High Arbitrator Kolthek, whose family had controlled trade routes for centuries. "Traitor Zekthar," Kolthek's voice echoed through the chamber. "You stand accused of engaging in unauthorized military action against Korgan vessels in the Outer Rim territories. How do you plead?" "The humans were carrying medical supplies," Zekthar began, but Kolthek cut him off with a raised hand. "The species in question is irrelevant. You destroyed a vessel without proper authorization and endangered consortium property. The Prophet's Edge suffered damage that cost 14,000 credits to repair. Your weapons expenditure alone exceeded your monthly budget by 300%. The trial was a formality." Zekthar watched as his life was dissected by accountants and lawyers who spoke only in numbers and regulations. His years of profitable trading, his spotless record, his contributions to consortium expansion, none of it mattered. What mattered was that he'd acted outside his authority to help strangers. "Furthermore," continued the prosecutor, a thin Velnari with cybernetic implants covering half his face, "intelligence reports indicate that the destroyed vessels may not have been pirates at all, but legitimate salvage operators working under proper permits." Zekthar's forearms tensed. "That's impossible. They were attacking a medical transport. Human vessels frequently carry contraband disguised as humanitarian supplies. Your intervention may have cost legitimate businesses significant revenue." The lies came so easily that Zekthar almost believed them himself. He'd seen the pirates' weapon signatures, heard their threatening communications. But the consortium had already decided his fate before the trial began. The verdict came swift and brutal. Stripped of his trading license, all assets frozen pending further investigation. A fine of 2 million credits for damages and lost revenue. Criminal charges would be filed if he couldn't pay within 60 days. As Zekthar left the tribunal chamber, his former colleagues avoided his gaze. Word had already spread through the trading floors and corporate offices. He was poisoned now, a cautionary tale about the dangers of thinking beyond profit margins. His apartment door had been sealed with corporate locks by the time he returned. Security drones circled the building like mechanical vultures, ensuring he couldn't retrieve his belongings. Everything he'd worked for over 20 years of trading was gone in a single morning. The communication from his family came that evening, delivered to the cheap hotel where he'd taken refuge. His clutch brother Rixtar spoke with cold formality. "The family council has voted. Your actions have brought shame upon our lineage. Until you restore your honor and repay your debts, you are no longer welcome among us. Do not contact us again." Former business partners blocked his calls. Old friends suddenly became too busy to meet. The few who did speak to him offered only pity and advice, to disappear quietly to some frontier world where his disgrace wouldn't follow him. Weeks passed in a blur of failed job interviews and closed doors. No legitimate trading company would hire him. The few offers he received were from smugglers and criminals who saw his desperation as an opportunity. His savings dwindled as legal fees mounted and hotel bills accumulated. Sitting in his cramped room one night staring at collection notices and eviction warnings, Zekthar found himself thinking about the human captain's words. Humanity remembers its debts. At the time, they'd seemed like empty sentiment from a species barely capable of interstellar travel. But what other options did he have? Finding human contact information proved surprisingly difficult. The consortium's databases treated human space as barely worth cataloging, listing only major trade ports and diplomatic channels. It took 3 days of searching through outdated directories before he found communication codes for the human frontier territories. The message he composed was brief and carefully worded. He wasn't even sure it would reach Captain Vasquez after all these months. Human technology was primitive by galactic standards, their communication networks slow and unreliable. Captain Vasquez of the vessel Nightingale. This is Zekthar of the former Velnari trading ship, Prophet's Edge. I hope this message finds you well. I find myself in circumstances where I must ask if your earlier words about humanity remembering its debts were spoken in earnest. I require assistance that my own people cannot or will not provide. I understand if this request exceeds what you can offer, given our brief encounter. Nevertheless, I thought it worth attempting to contact you before exploring other options. He hesitated before sending the message, knowing how desperate it would sound. A once successful trader reduced to begging help from aliens his own species, considered backward. But pride was a luxury he could no longer afford. The transmission disappeared into the void, carrying his last hope toward human space at the speed of light. Captain Elena Vasquez was reviewing cargo manifests in her small office on Haven Colony when the message arrived. The communication array crackled with static as it decoded the transmission from distant Velnari space. She read Zekthar's words twice, her expression growing more serious with each line. "Rodriguez," she called to her assistant, a young man with prosthetic legs who'd lost his limbs in the plague outbreak. "I need you to send a priority message through the old military channels. Use my retired commander codes." The message that went out was simple, but carried weight that few aliens would understand. Elena Vasquez wasn't just a cargo hauler who'd gotten lucky. She was a decorated veteran of the Third Border War, a former commander who'd saved 12 ships at the Battle of Kepler Station. More importantly, Haven Colony wasn't just another frontier settlement. It was home to the families of active military personnel stationed throughout human space. The first response came from Admiral Chen, aboard the battleship Defiance, currently patrolling the Centauri sector. His wife and 2 children lived on Haven Colony. When he learned that the alien who'd saved their lives was in trouble, his reaction was immediate. "Communications, get me a secure channel to Fleet Command. Priority Alpha clearance." Within minutes, the message was bouncing through human space via military networks that operated faster than civilian channels. Each relay station added its own authentication codes, marking the transmission as genuine and urgent. The simple phrase "Code Honor" appeared in message headers, a designation that hadn't been used in over a decade. At the Luna Naval Academy, instructor Captain Torres was teaching a class on interspecies relations when his secure communicator buzzed. He read the message, then dismissed his students early. Torres had served under Elena Vasquez during the war. If she was calling in old favors, it was serious. On the industrial world of New Birmingham, Dock Supervisor Patricia Lowe was overseeing the loading of rare earth minerals onto a freighter bound for Velnari space when her terminal chimed with an encrypted message. Her brother was a sergeant stationed on Haven Colony. The alien who'd saved him was now asking for help. The pattern repeated across dozens of worlds. Veterans of Elena's old unit received the call and began reaching out to their own networks. Active military personnel learned that their families had been saved by an alien traitor, who was now facing ruin for his kindness. The story spread through barracks, fleet-ready rooms, and command centers with the speed of righteousness. But it wasn't just the military that responded. Haven Colony had been a research station before the plague hit. home to scientists whose work had implications across human space. The antiviral compounds that Zekthar had helped deliver hadn't just saved colonists. They'd prevented a pandemic that could have killed millions. Dr. Elizabeth Kim, head of the Colonial Health Authority, was in a meeting with pharmaceutical executives when she received word. Her research team had been on Haven Colony when the plague struck. The data they'd been carrying had formed the basis for treatments now used across known space. "Gentlemen," she said, standing up from the conference table, "this meeting is over. I have more important matters to attend to." The executives protested, but Dr. Kim was already making calls. Within an hour, 3 major pharmaceutical companies had received very pointed messages about their ongoing contracts with human colonial authorities. The subtext was clear: help the alien or find new customers. In the halls of the Human Colonial Senate, Senator Williams was debating trade regulations when his aide whispered urgent news in his ear. Williams had been a junior officer on one of the ships Elena had saved during the war. He called for an immediate recess and began making calls to colleagues whose districts included military families. The transformation was remarkable to witness. Human bureaucracy, normally a sluggish beast that moved at the speed of committee meetings and environmental impact studies, suddenly became a precision instrument. Forms that usually took weeks to process were approved in hours. Permits that required months of review appeared overnight. At the Human Trade Ministry, Director Thompson found himself fielding calls from senators, admirals, and corporate executives, all asking about the same thing: economic leverage with the Velnari Consortium. Thompson had been planning to retire next year, but suddenly found himself coordinating the most complex trade operation in human history. The really impressive part wasn't the speed, it was the coordination. Normally, human organizations fought each other almost as much as they fought external threats. Military commanders jealously guarded their resources. Corporate executives prioritized profits over politics. Government officials moved at their own pace regardless of external pressure. But now they were all moving in the same direction, driven by a simple principle that transcended normal human divisions. You don't abandon those who helped you in your darkest hour. The communications networks hummed with activity as messages flowed between Earth, the colonies, and fleet positions throughout human space. Old favors were called in. Dormant connections were reactivated. People who hadn't spoken in years suddenly found themselves working together toward a common goal. Admiral Chen's wife on Haven Colony received a call from her husband's former rival, offering resources for the effort. Competing corporations found themselves coordinating strategies. Political opponents discovered they agreed on at least one thing: humanity's debts must be paid. And through it all, one phrase kept appearing in secure communications and classified briefings: one of ours needs help. The galaxy was about to learn what that phrase really meant to humanity. The first sign something was wrong came during a routine trade meeting on the neutral station Crossroads 7. Ambassador Velkith of the Velnari Consortium was negotiating mineral rights with 3 different species when human ambassador Catherine Blake walked into the conference room uninvited. "Gentlemen," she said pleasantly, taking a seat at the table without being asked, "I believe we need to discuss the Zekthar situation." Velkith's scaled face showed confusion. "I'm sorry, Ambassador Blake, but this is a private meeting, and I have no knowledge of any Zekthar situation." Catherine smiled and placed a datapad on the table. "Zekthar, former trader with your consortium, currently facing criminal charges for helping humans. I thought you might want to know that the Altarian Mining Guild is very interested in expanding their operations into sectors currently controlled by Velnari interests." The Altarian representative's eyes widened with surprise. The hegemony delegate shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Everyone knew the humans had been cultivating relationships with smaller species, but no one realized how deep those connections. Furthermore, Catherine continued, the Crystalline Collective has expressed concerns about Velnari treatment of their shipping partners. Apparently there have been complaints about unfair trade practices and arbitrary contract violations. Velkith's compound eyes narrowed. The humans shouldn't have access to crystalline trade disputes. Those were internal matters handled through encrypted diplomatic channels. How did they know about private consortium business? Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out in a dozen meeting rooms and trade centers. Human diplomats appeared at negotiations they shouldn't have known about, armed with information they shouldn't have possessed, speaking for species they'd barely interacted with before. On the industrial world of Velnari Beta, mining supervisor Toxril received an urgent message from his automated systems. 3 major shipments of rare minerals bound for human space had been delayed due to technical difficulties. The loading mechs had developed mysterious malfunctions. The cargo containers had failed safety inspections that they'd passed hundreds of times before. The transport ships had been quarantined due to potential contamination. Each delay was perfectly legal under galactic shipping regulations. Each inspection was technically justified. But the timing was impossible to ignore. Similar disruptions cascaded through Velnari trade networks. Shipping lanes experienced unexpected traffic control delays. Cargo containers were subjected to random security screenings that somehow always turned up minor violations requiring extensive paperwork. Border checkpoints that usually processed Velnari vessels in minutes suddenly became sticklers for proper documentation. The really unsettling part was how coordinated it all seemed. The Catharan Trade Federation, normally neutral in interspecies disputes, began finding fault with Velnari shipping manifests. The Aquatic Consortium raised concerns about environmental violations in Velnari mining operations. Even the usually isolationist hive minds started asking pointed questions about consortium labor practices. High Arbitrator Kolthek was reviewing the mounting complaints in his office when his aide rushed in with news that made his blood run cold. "Sir, we're receiving reports from our monitoring station in the neutral zone. 3 human dreadnoughts have appeared near our border." Kolthek's forearms went rigid. "That's impossible. Human military doctrine commits their heavy ships to border patrol against the Korgan pirates. They don't have the resources for power projection this far from their territory." The tactical display showed the 3 massive vessels in perfect formation: the Retribution, Valiance, and Honor Guard. Each ship was nearly 2 kilometers long, bristling with weapons that could crack planets. Their energy signatures marked them as the newest class of human warships, vessels that intelligence reports claimed were still in testing phases. "They're broadcasting standard peaceful intentions," the aide continued, claiming this is a routine training exercise in international space, all perfectly legal under galactic maritime law. But everyone knew better. Training exercises didn't require 3 of humanity's most powerful warships, and they certainly didn't conduct them 50 light-years from human space, right next to Velnari territory. The message was clear without being stated. Humanity had teeth, and they were willing to show them. On the trading floors of Velnari Prime, panic was setting in. Stock prices for consortium companies began dropping as investors realized that human economic influence was far greater than anyone had suspected. Mining operations that relied on human-controlled asteroid fields found their contracts under review. Manufacturing plants that used human rare earth elements discovered supply chain irregularities. Most shocking of all was the revelation that humans had been quietly building relationships throughout the galaxy for decades. Species that the consortium had dismissed as irrelevant suddenly mattered because they controlled resources or shipping, lanes that human trade depended on. And every single one of them seemed willing to side with humanity in this dispute. The Zephyrian crystal merchants, who controlled the market for advanced computing components, announced they were reviewing their trading relationships with species that mistreated business partners. The gas giant refineries of the Jovian Alliance experienced technical difficulties that affected fuel shipments to Velnari space. Even the normally reliable automated trading systems began experiencing software glitches that somehow only affected consortium transactions. In his private chamber, Kolthek stared at reports streaming in from across Velnari space. Every major trade route was experiencing delays. Every important business relationship was under pressure. Military intelligence was reporting human fleet movements that suggested capabilities far beyond what their public assessments had indicated. The humans had been underestimated. Badly underestimated. and they were making sure everyone in the galaxy knew it. The emergency session of the Velnari Corporate Council convened at midnight, their chamber lit by the harsh glow of holographic displays showing economic data that grew worse by the hour. High Arbitrator Colthek's usually composed demeanor cracked as he addressed the assembled board members. "Our shipping revenue is down 43% in the last week," he announced, his voice strained. 3 of our major clients have terminated contracts. The Crystalline Collective is threatening to find new suppliers for our entire mineral extraction operation. Board member Rick Snoll, an elderly Velnari with cybernetic vision enhancers, leaned forward. "And the military situation?" "The human dreadnoughts remain in position," Colthek replied grimly. "Our intelligence services have detected at least 12 more human warships moving toward the neutral zone. Ships that supposedly don't exist according to their public fleet registries." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. The humans had been hiding their true military strength while presenting themselves as a minor border species barely worth noticing. Now they were revealing capabilities that rivaled the major galactic powers. "What do they want?" asked another board member. "Justice for traitor Zekthar," Colthek said, the words tasting bitter in his mouth. "Full restoration of his status, assets, and reputation, plus compensation for damages to his career and standing." The vote was unanimous. Within hours, Zekthar received an official communication bearing the golden seal of the Corporate Council. All charges were dropped. His assets were restored with interest. His trading license was reinstated at the highest level. The consortium was even offering him a position as Director of Interspecies Relations, a job that hadn't existed the day before. But the humans weren't finished. Ambassador Blake requested a private meeting with Zekthar on the neutral station Crossroads 7. He arrived expecting a simple diplomatic courtesy, perhaps a formal thank you for the consortium's cooperation. Instead, he found himself in a secure conference room with Captain Elena Vasquez, Admiral Chen, Dr. Elizabeth Kim, and several other humans whose names he didn't recognize but whose bearing suggested significant authority. "Zekthar," Elena said, standing as he entered, "there's something you need to know about what you saved that day." She activated a holographic display showing Haven Colony, but not as Zekthar remembered it. The settlement was much larger than he'd realized, with research facilities and laboratories hidden beneath the surface structures. Advanced medical equipment and quantum computers were visible through transparent sections of the underground complex. Haven Colony wasn't just a frontier settlement, Dr. Kim explained. It was the most advanced medical research facility in human space. We were studying a virus that had the potential to become a galaxy-wide pandemic, something that could jump between species and kill billions. The hologram shifted to show molecular structures and genetic sequences that meant nothing to Zekthar, but clearly represented something significant. The plague that hit the colony was a weaponized version of that virus, Admiral Chen continued. Someone had turned our research against us. But our scientists had also developed a universal antiviral compound that could stop it. The only problem was getting it off-world before the research facility was destroyed. Elena's voice was quiet but steady. When you saved the Nightingale, you weren't just protecting medical supplies for one colony. You were saving the only copy of research that would prevent a pandemic across 17 different worlds. The data I was carrying has since been used to develop treatments that have saved over 50 million lives. Zekthar's compound eyes widened as the true scope of his actions became clear. The molecular structures on the display represented cures for diseases he'd never heard of, affecting species across the galaxy. His intervention hadn't just saved one human colony. It had prevented a catastrophe that could have devastated civilized space. "We tried to tell you at the time," Elena said, "but the research was classified. Even now, most of the galaxy doesn't know how close we came to a pandemic that could have ended interstellar civilization." Dr. Kim stepped forward with a data pad. "Your name is listed as a co-author on 47 research papers that came out of that data. The Galactic Medical Consortium has voted to award you their highest honor for contributions to interspecies health. 3 universities want to offer you honorary doctorates. But it was Admiral Chen who delivered the most surprising news. The Human Colonial Senate has voted to offer you a unique position. We want you to become humanity's first alien ambassador, a permanent representative who can help other species understand what we're really about. Zekthar looked around the room at the faces of beings who had mobilized an entire species to repay a debt he'd never known existed. I don't understand. Why go to such lengths for one traitor? Elena smiled. Because you showed us something important. When we needed help, you didn't calculate the cost or weigh the political implications. You just did what was right. That's the kind of person we want representing us to the galaxy. The offer was extraordinary. As humanity's alien ambassador, Zekthar would have access to resources and authority that few beings in the galaxy possessed. He would work directly with human leadership to build relationships with other species, using his unique perspective, as someone who had experienced both human generosity and alien prejudice. There's just one condition, Admiral Chen added with a slight smile. You have to promise never to underestimate humans again. Zekthar's mandibles clicked in what passed, for laughter among his species. I think I learned that lesson already. As he accepted the position, Zekthar realized that his small act of kindness months ago had indeed reshaped the galaxy, but not in the way he'd expected. It hadn't just saved lives. It had revealed the true nature of humanity to a universe that had dismissed them as primitive and weak. The galaxy would never make that mistake again.